All right, good evening. I'd like to call this Board of Adjustments meeting to order. And first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite anybody who has anything they'd want to approach the board members about anything that's not on the agenda tonight. This is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none. I've been informed that there is a slight amendment to make to the minutes of...
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The minutes stated that off-street parking was prohibited. It should be on-street parking is prohibited. That was stated in the motion. So if there are no other changes, we could make a recommendation to approve with that change.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April the 26th with that change.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion made, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. That was quick. Okay, moving on. This is for new business, and for new business, it's a public hearing. The Board of Adjustments is a quasi-judicial body, and its rulings are final. Any appeals to the Board of Adjustment rulings must be filed with the Circuit Court within 30 days of a Board of Adjustments ruling. And for the new business, anybody giving testimony will be sworn in by Amanda. And first item on the new business is Gene Breeding, 115 Harrison Court, requesting a conditional use permit for short-term rental in an R1 zone. We can start off with Amanda with your overview, or we can start off with the applicant.
Yeah, I'll give a quick overview. So just for reference, the property is located right here on Harrison Court. So there is a little thumbtack on top of it. Just to give you some reference, this is Berea Municipal Utilities Building, of course Harrison Road right here. So the property is in an R1 zone. I'm going to zoom in just kind of on top of that particular property. And all notices have been sent as required. The property owners are here to represent, and so I would ask you all, which of you is coming to present it to the board, if you will step to one of the podiums and I will swear you in. So if you would raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm to do so.
And could you please state your name and residence for the record?
My name is Merle Breeding. I live at 115 Harrison Court in
Thank you.
Berea.
Thank you. So if you'd like to give the board just an overview of your plan.
Yes, we are Merle and Gene Breeding. We're the owners of the property at 115 Harrison Court. We don't want the property to sit vacant while we are away, which is much of the time. So we are proposing to rent it out on a short-term basis through Airbnb. Airbnb screens all guests, and we do not have to rent to anyone with less than a 5-star rating. We will provide a keyless entry, and we will provide additional liability. Check-in for all guests will be between 4 and 10 p.m. Check-out by 9 a.m. the day that they leave. We will have house rules regarding noise level in consideration of the neighbors. We've had rental in the past, throughout the past 30 years, and we've determined that short-term rental is less invasive to the neighborhood than long-term rental, which we would probably have to do if we're denied here. The B&B requires strict rules concerning the property maintenance and both the house and the yard, and these will be adhered to. I'm here for any questions that you may have.
About what portion of the year, roughly in terms of percent or months, are you looking at being away?
In the past, we have been about 6 months, but in the future, we anticipate being away a little more often maybe being here 3 or 4 months out of the year and away the rest of the year. We have property in another state.
How many square feet is the home?
I don't know. It's 3-bedroom, 2 baths with an extra large living room.
Single story? I don't know if
Yeah,
we can
single
get a
story.
rough idea of what,
Yeah, we can get a rough idea.
it looks like it's. got-
About 1,700, I think.
Okay. And it would be the whole house. You're not looking at partial parts of the house where you,
We have a
There.
garage that we would like to lock away from the rest of the house. We do have, as you can see, plenty of parking off-street where, to satisfy your amendment that you just passed. So I don't think that should be a problem. There will be less traffic also with the short-term rental than there would be with the long-term or if we were home.
this is not something usually that comes up, hasn't yet, maybe it will come up more, but just in the, it's a personal interest of mine. I did notice that solar was on the roof about a year ago when I was walking through that neighborhood, and thinking about tourism and sustainability, I did wonder if that might be a marketing aspect that you're looking to highlight with
No,
your-
it is not.
Okay.
If we sell instead of renting, it would be, yes, but as for the Airbnb, it would not be.
Okay.
I was trying to cut the garage off. It's hard to tell from that aerial where the garage actually is. So is the garage just this front right here, or does the garage go all the way back?
The garage is quite large. It's about 500 square feet by itself, besides the 1,700.
Okay, I'm gonna take off, then we'll just take off 500 for the garage. This looks like it's pulling a little bit bigger of a measurement.
It's about 1,700 without the garage, and the garage is about 500 extra, I believe. I haven't, really measured.
That could be is that a back porch that's open on the back, or is that part of the house?
Yeah, that's showing 3,500. So is this a covered porch or something back here?
I believe that addition was added since the house was built, but has since been incorporated into the house. It's been part of the living room.
So the reason for the question on the square footage is that Kentucky Building Code requires an occupant load to be set at 200 square feet per person.
Yes,
And so that helps us to establish, so if we use your 1,700, that would still, that would be 8 people that you could allow at a maximum by the building code. Now, of course, you can choose to limit it less than that.
yes, we have 3 bedrooms that would sleep 6 people.
Okay. So you would set the occupant load at 6?
Yes,
Okay.
That's very helpful.
That helps out.
Um,
You said that you may be away more later on from.
yes.
While you're gone, who watches the place for you?
We have a gentleman who is a maintenance man who takes care of it has taken care of it in the past, and said that if it is an Airbnb, he would continue to do so.
And would that be issues related to occupants' behavior or anything like that, or just?
We will have a manager who will take care of that.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the conditional use.
Can we
We're gonna do the public.
see if we've got any other folks that would like to address the board on this?
Yes, that
Yeah.
question.
No. So,
Okay.
yes, at this time, if there's anybody that, come on up and want to state your name and address for the record and swear you in.
Do Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you state your name and property address for the record, please?
Okay, my name is Jacqueline Bowling, and as of this month, I have lived at 111 Harrison Court for 40 years. I chose this neighborhood because it was zoned R1. No apartments, duplexes, and certainly no Airbnbs. I also located there because it's a safe area to raise a child. There are other families here tonight that are third, fourth, and fifth generations occupants of Harrison Court. Our subdivision has 24 homes and now only one house. All the Airbnbs in Berea are located on city streets with high traffic. None are in a subdivision. I do not want to live in a transient neighborhood. Our residents are composed of elderly adults and young families with small children. We are most concerned with safety. The couple who wishes to put an Airbnb in our subdivision bought their house approximately 2 years ago and have only lived there about a half a year or less. It is hard to believe that they would compromise our safety while they are in Florida just to turn a profit at our expense. I am requesting that this board vote no to this zone change. I don't think anyone on this board would like an Airbnb next door to you. And I would ask that the people that are opposed to this would please stand and allow them time to say what they think about the situation. I have researched the Airbnbs. I know where they're all located. I know the price of the properties. I know the comings and goings. So if there's any questions that I might be able to answer, I would be glad to do so.
I have one question. One of the things we've been somewhat taking into consideration is the vicinity to the nearest existing conditional use Airbnb. And so my question is, do you know where that would be?
The closest ones to our subdivision are on Center Street.
Okay.
There's two there. There's one on Forest, one on Fee, one on High Street, one on Jackson, and one on Adams Street. Those are, especially those on Adams Street, are already zoned in an area of B2, which is major business district, and in walking distance of surrounding businesses. Our subdivision is older. It was established to be an R1, and that's what we want it to remain.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board on this item?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you please state your name and property address for the record?
My name is Benny Boggs. I'm at 107 Harrison Court. And I have come to refute to have a non-conforming business in our R1 district. I don't want the transit travel. We don't know who's going to be in our neighborhood. It's, I don't know who judges that. Most of the time you rent, you don't know who they are. It could be drug dealers, it could be child molesters, it could be anything of that nature. And it is an R1 neighborhood. It's been there for about probably 45 years developed. It's been in our family, my wife's family, for 5 generations. We do not want to see this turn into into a motel atmosphere. We really don't want the strangers there. We know who's there now. We know who owns the property. We know each individual within our neighborhood and not coming and going. We have a really quiet neighborhood. It's secluded, and the city keeps pushing stuff at us. Put the dog park down there, and they put soccer fields down there. They put everything down there in a place that doesn't need to be there. But that's because they own the property. So we're really fighting this thing. We have teachers, medical people, retired Iron Force people, professors, store managers, manufacturing people, business owners, and about all of them are retired. So I and we don't want the type of travel we know we could get. It could be a day, it could be 2 days, it could be a week, it could be a month. We don't want that type of travel in our neighborhood. We want to know who's there. So we're asking this board to reject non-conforming air bread and breakfast. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to come up?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you state your name and address for the record?
I'm Shane Morris. I'm at 119 Harrison Court. We've not been there long, and we looked for 6 years. I've looked at every old house in Berea. I don't know how many I walked. People ask about how's the people living. I said, I've been in that house. I've been in that house. And so, as Jackie and Benny have stated, it's there's something there in that neighborhood that is rare. And when you look at where these other businesses are, they're in mixed areas. And so I can't imagine that the board would just, as if it were nothing, go ahead and make such a change to this place. You know, there's a difference between what you can do and what you should do. I hate to break it to the city of Berea, but your hunting ordinance ain't worth the paper it's written on. State legislature sets hunting regulations. And so in that bucolic neighborhood, it's not unusual at all to see a half dozen does. I've got a corner lot. I've got a good place to shoot crossbows. I can charge $50 a head. Side hustle, I can make pretty good money. And as long as that arrow doesn't leave that yard, that deer doesn't leave that yard, shoot it point of the shoulder. I hate to break it to the city, but there's nothing you can do. Should I do that? No. I wouldn't do that to my neighbors. All the traffic and, you know, who's there and who's not. And then finally, I've got small children. And Airbnb is a Silicon Valley tech firm that, and I know people who operate Airbnbs. I see the business side of it, and we've talked about it. It's nothing personal. But what they're concerned about is, will the credit card pay? And the type of individual that comes there, it's right out of today's headlines. We all talk about it at home, I'm sure, around the dinner table. That's exactly the type of traffic that Airbnb is all about. They celebrate it. So, I'm sorry. I was saying that Airbnb is more concerned with, does the credit card pay, as to the type of individual that is staying at a location. And, again, as a father of small children, no. I strongly ask you not to shoehorn something into a neighborhood that has none of it at all. There's a difference between what you can do and what you should do. So thank you.
I do have a question. When I think of that neighborhood, I do think of a mixed-use neighborhood. So can you explain how you justify, in your opinion, what makes it non-mixed use, right? We've got the golf course, we've got the Berea Municipal Utilities, there's a church,
We
How
live
do
there.
you-
We live there. That's,
okay.
that would be the difference.
Okay. Um, I live not far from an Airbnb on Walnut Street, and I do think of that as a non-mixed use, off, not a main road, and I certainly had concerns, and nothing has materialized yet. I would love to hear from Amanda because these concerns come up. They have come up in the past, and I'd love to hear if we've had situations that have been complaints due to Airbnbs. Given that some of these locations, I'm thinking of High Street, there was quite a bit of concern regarding them. So, do we have any?
To date, we have, so we put these regulations in place in 2018. And just a little explanation, the reason that we made, we elected to make Airbnb or short-term rental a conditional use permit that comes in front of a board for approval is so that citizens and neighbors would have a say.
Sure.
So I do think that that's important, that, it's a good gauge to know what residents think about their neighborhoods, right?
Right.
And what, if they want those characteristics to change or not. But since 2018, I'd have to look at the number. I think we're at about 15 or 16 Airbnbs that we've approved. And to date, we have not had any complaints. And just in all transparency, we have had people who have said that they felt like the property, and I don't want to sway any decisions, just generally speaking, we have heard comments in these meetings that people have felt like that the property was better taken care of than long-term rental, because the property owners were, or a maintenance person, someone was at the property more often than the long-term rentals. We see long-term rentals that the property owner never goes to, never checks on it. So, again, I don't mean to sway that, but the question was, have we had any complaints? No, we haven't.
How many of you placed into neighborhoods that there is no rental? There's one long-term rental with a family member at Harrison Court. So how many other neighborhoods have you done that?
And that, again, that was a concern with, as the chairman said, High Street. So just behind City Hall, was I think people had owned those houses a long time. It was an established neighborhood. Everybody knew each other, and it certainly was the same concern, I think.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I don't always know what's rental property and what's
Right.
not. So it would be hard for me to, I don't know that I can quantify that because I don't know what, I don't know if the adjacent properties are rental or not. I would say the majority of them has more rental than, of the ones we've approved, have had more rental than not. That would be my guess in the areas that I know of that we've approved them.
And again, I think most, people understand the business side of things. We are asking that, there's more than money. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been listening. Would you, do you have any additional comments that you would like to address? Any of the concerns?
Yes, I know some of these people. I'm friends with some of these people. I wouldn't do anything to hurt them or their children or any of their relatives. Like I said before, Airbnb does screen all of the people who apply to come to a B&B, and if they're not worthy, we do not have to accept them as guests. And we did not want to, or still do not want to, rent our house out long-term. We feel like the short-term rental will have the property taken better care of than it would be if it was long-term. There'll be a lot less traffic on a short-term basis. Part of the time, it will not even be rented at all. It will be vacant for short periods of time. And when it is occupied, there'll be less traffic from that as there would be with someone living there full-time.
And I don't know if anybody, yeah, but please, so that we can capture your comments on, well, I can, but I'm not sure those out in the, the cyber world can hear you.
Another concern that I have is property values. You understand, when you bring in motels or hotels, your property value as an R1 is going downhill. And that's a concern of mine. And so I would like to request the Breedings to withdraw their request for a bed and breakfast.
You certainly may. Yeah, you'll have to be sworn in. Please come on up.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And your name for the record?
Jean Breeding. We also love Harrison Court. I walk there every day. I love the creek. I have to go down there every day. I've lost all three of my children, and this is why I have to be in a place like that. My son died last winter. I'm not able to stay in Kentucky a lot longer because of my losses, but we do want to keep our property so that at a later date, we probably will retire here. We maintain our property. I'm very particular. B&B also screens, and they have to be 5-star people that comes in there. And unless they are, they don't even notify us. They won't, they don't even accept it. So the quality of people from the B&B will be much better than long-term, because we're going to have to do something with the house until I'm able to come back to Kentucky. If we don't get the B&B, we will have to long-term rent it, and I don't like that because I've done long-term rental before, and I know what happens. We had long-term rental on Chestnut Street, and that was a nightmare, even though we had screened. So I want my house taken care of. I want it maintained. Airbnb also has strict regulations. We have to maintain that property. It has to look good on the outside. It has to be immaculate inside, or they will drop us. And so it's just, we need to do something with the house, and we will one way or the other. But we prefer the Airbnb because we think it's safer for the community, less destruction on the house. And also, there will be less going and coming with Airbnb than us because we have 2 cars. We're going and coming all the time. We're going to have, I don't want any pets in the house. Would prefer no children, but we can't do that. So they will have to, no smoking, no partying, quiet. So we may not be rented a whole lot because of my strict regulations, but Airbnb also enforces and goes along with what I'm saying. But we do love the community too, and we do respect our neighbors.
Come on up.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your name and address for the record?
My name's Gary Tyree. I'm a 38-year resident of 102 Harrison Court. And, you know, I've listened to the conversation both ways. I love both of those people and go to church with them. But that's neither here nor there. One thing I'd like to share with you all before I say anything else is that I've talked to other families who could not be here for one reason or another, all of whom have smaller children, all of whom are definitely opposed and moved down there because it is a R1 community and there are no businesses in it. And they bought the property, some of them most recently, because of the deed restricted property in that area. So, and all of them have relayed to me that they were definitely opposed to this. And, you know, that's something I think needs to be respected as well. You know,
Just a point of clarification. You mentioned deed.
Pardon me?
Sorry, just wanted to ask a question of clarification. You mentioned deed restrictions. Is there neighborhood restrictions of some kind?
yeah, the entire every piece of property there is it's a deed restricted, even though we don't have a valid, or we don't have a working
I think we
homeowners association. The properties all are deed restriction.
I think specifically, though, are you asking about if there's deed restrictions concerning use?
Right, right.
Yeah, so do you know, in those deed restrictions, are there restrictions that say, you know, can't be used for a business? Because a lot of people have home occupational businesses, so I've seen that in deed restrictions before, or any type of sublets, or if there is anything in your deed restrictions that would not allow this type of use or business in that house, it would be, even though you don't have an HOA, any property owner in that subdivision can file civil suit. Those deed restrictions have to be adhered to, whether there's an HOA or not, and the enforcement of that comes from civilly. So it is a civil suit from any property owner against anyone else who is not adhering to those regulations. So again, I don't know if there's anything specific in your community or in your neighborhood. It's on the plat, okay. And so if there is something specific, that's how that would be handled. Okay. Okay. And to be honest with you, that's what I tell communities that don't want Airbnbs. You know, the reality is you can form an HOA at any time. You can refile deed restrictions. You know, just something to consider. That's what I'm trying to tell new subdivisions going in who come to me and say, we don't want Airbnb, we don't want these. And so I think that's how that would be handled is, again, that kind of overlays, puts everybody on that same playing field.
Right.
Yep.
And another comment I'd like to make in regard to how the properties are taken care of. Any one of these homes you walk into, they're immaculate. Everyone in that subdivision takes care of their homes. So, that to me is not an overriding issue one way or the other, because all the properties that are there now are all taken care of, with the exception of a couple. And, we have to help the city get us to enforce those things sometimes. But otherwise, as others have stated, we know who's coming and going. We all have cameras on the front of our houses, so we know who lives in the court. We know who's there. For the most part, the other day there was a fellow that came in, didn't know him. And so I walked out and said, "Can I help you, sir?" So he was looking for someone, but I didn't know why he was parked in front of my house, and I didn't know who he was looking for. But anyhow, we all, as neighbors, look out for each other, and we always have. So if anything, and having people we don't know come into the community, and they're changed. I don't know how often it'd be rented. I don't know how often the Airbnb would be putting people in there, but they're different. They're strange. Strangers coming in. That's not something we want. And I think personally that the consideration should be focused in that regard. I've been here 38 years. Jackie's 40. 43, Benny 40. We've all been there since that Harrison Court had been established, and it's worked great without businesses being rental being allowed in there, so forth. So we'd like to keep it that way.
Well, thank you. I didn't quite hear that. So there is restrictions on the plat. We don't have a copy of the plat. We have a copy of the deed. It doesn't look like there's anything specified in the deed. Of course, it doesn't mean it's not tied to the land in a prior so,
But my understanding was there was nothing specific to
right.
this use.
Yep.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. We'll you can come up. We'll try to entertain a answer, but we may not have one.
I'd like to ask the Brady, you say that the occupants are going to be well checked. Do they do background checks on everybody?
I'm sorry. Can we? We're going to have to keep the commentary out of the aisles and at the podiums, just so that we're capturing the information.
Do they do background checks on the people who asked to rent? Of course, they said they'd be checked.
I don't think that they do background checks, but they do have a rating system that they rate all people who enter an Airbnb. And they also have the people who are there to give stars as to their stay. So there are two ratings going both ways. And if the ratings are not what they ought to be, they don't even notify us. They just said no.
Well, I understand that, but it's still anybody's guess.
To answer your question, Mr. Boggs, I do not think there is a background check on these people.
Thank you. I didn't think there would be.
I don't think there is. But I think you will find that the people who stay in Airbnbs are not the same type people who stay in hotels and motels.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your name and address for the record.
I'm Patricia Harrison Abrams, 109 Harrison Court. One of the descendants, been there longer than anyone else in the neighborhood. There are 25 lots. The plat was approved in December of 1979. I moved in 1980. My parents developed the land. There's 25 lots. 5 of those have small children. One of them has a child that's in college. I've raised 2 kids, 7 grandkids there. I went to an Airbnb recently. That owner did not know I was there. The owner of the property did not know I was there. I went with someone. They had rented it. Those kind of questions were not asked them. And it was through Airbnb. I'm probably the most pro-government, City of Berea government in this room. I'm former city clerk. Was here for 25 years. But the City of Berea has failed, greatly failed, our neighborhood. We've had the walking path brought people in, didn't know we were there. I worked in the utilities for 3.5 years. People would come in to pay their bill. I've never seen this neighborhood before. And I always said, we're glad you didn't know it was here. That's when we started having traffic. When the walking path opened, we started having break-ins. When the dog park came, more traffic. Now we have soccer fields and you cannot get down the road. It is a dead-end road. And I believe that you've had people park in front of your house and couldn't even get out of his driveway. We don't want nor need extra traffic or extra people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Breen, what, should this conditional use, if you were not to succeed in acquiring it, do you have an alternative in mind for how you would utilize your property?
We need to either have short-term or long-term rental. We would probably have to find a long-term renter. We don't want to do that. We think there'll be more traffic if we do that than there would be with short-term rental. We think the neighborhood will be less affected with short-term than it would be with long-term.
All right.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
And your name and address.
My name is Ann Rose, and I live at 106 Harrison Court with my husband Larry. We have lived there for 38 years at the end of this month. We moved there, and the whole subdivision wasn't occupied at the time. We've never had problems. We now keep our 3-year-old grandson 3 to 5 days a week. He likes to get out and ride his little bicycle around the neighborhood, go to the creek and explore. And if we had an Airbnb and I did not know who was there, I would not feel safe, especially to go to the creek. And I think that we have elderly neighbors. We have more children, which everybody's already said that. And we just have to look out to make sure that our neighborhood is kept safe. And if this zoning is changed to accommodate one house, then the feeling in our neighborhood is going to change, because it's not going to feel as safe as it did before. Because we're going to have people in there that we don't know who they are, we don't know where they come from, what they do, nothing about it. And as far as the Airbnb being wonderful, we've all seen on TV about the parties. 2 people rent a house, 100 people show up for a party, they destroyed the house. The owners didn't know they were going to do that. And the Airbnb and Verbo has teamed up to create an initiative to shut down so-called party houses on their platform in order to avert a PR disaster. And it's cost them millions, and they spend it every day so that this won't get out about how they are. And we don't need this in our neighborhood.
Well, that's, we've, I think we may have exhausted, any, thoughts and viewpoints on it. Is there a, motion from any member of the
If
Board?
I might, I have one final.
Oh, please, yes.
I realize there is opposition in the neighborhood. I can assure you, we will do everything that we can possibly to make sure that the neighborhood is safe. We haven't contacted everyone in the neighborhood, but we have contacted everyone whose property is immediately adjacent to ours. We received no opposition from them and even encouragement from them.
You'll have to come up and, yep, part of the process.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name and address.
Larry Rose, and I live at 106 Harrison Court. That's my wife. I just, like she said before, we've been here for 38 years in that neighborhood. And I talked to Jim and Nancy Bowman, which lives right directly beside the Mr. Breeding, and they both stated that they were against it. They had said against it. They did not want it to be next to them. And they said that they wasn't able to make it here on account of their health. Mr. Bowman is like 95. I'm not sure how old his wife is, but they told me personally that they were against it, and they would sign a paper if needed. And there's a lady that lives on the other side of Mr. Breeding that she's in, I think, her 90s also, and she, you know, there they've got two people side by side, and people from Airbnb come in and throw parties. Everything I've read, majority of stuff I've read on the internet, Airbnb has paid millions to keep all this quiet, and they've been people one after the other saying that they bought a place in a neighborhood they felt was safe, and soon as an Airbnb came in, then they would destroy their property, and like I said, they would pay millions to keep it quiet. They didn't want it published and didn't want the public to know about it. They said they would come in and throw parties, and they would leave their trash because they accumulated more trash than what the city would legally pick up, and they would leave trash in the house. Of course, they would come in and clean it up, but the people that did that's what they paid their money for, to keep them quiet. But I'm sure that the one who lives on the other side would be against it also, but I did not talk to her, but I did talk to Jim and Nancy.
Well, we have a situation where there's not been any support in the neighborhood, only disagreement with the proposal. We haven't had any experience that we can, any precedent of much of the concerns in terms of our experience with other Airbnbs in our community. But we do need to make a decision, and whether to make some sort of a motion for conditional use or to deny. That's something that needs to be made.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just as a reminder, wanted to mention to the board that considerations that we have given in the past have been that conditional uses traditionally, as we've passed these, have only stayed with the property owner, so the sale or transfer of land. that the new owners would have to come in and get new approvals. We have always considered 2 off-street parking spaces be provided, and that no on-street parking be allowed, whether it is, whether they can park there or not. We have put that restriction as a condition, that they can't have on-street parking. And we have also put that a 10 p.m. check-in time, no later than 10 p.m. check-in time. And just for you guys, if you are approved, the house will be subject to a life safety check by our building inspector, and it is subject to transient room tax, so you would have to file a business license.
We understand that, and to refute the last statement, I did talk to both my neighbors on each side. Mr. Bowman was not home, but I talked to his wife. She told me there's no opposition at all. I spoke to Mrs.
Well, we
She
did
did
not-
tell me that, yes,
So we didn't hear from either party.
and
Either for or against, and so we really should keep comments based to either yourself, you really should only be able to speak for yourself.
okay.
And not for someone else.
I myself did speak to Mrs. Blackburn and to her son. They both indicated to me that there's no opposition.
Okay, well. Somebody like to step up to the plate and make a motion?
At one point, I've heard people say that it's a wonderful neighborhood, and I know the neighborhood. I worked here for a long time, okay? I drove through the neighborhood today, and I drive through that neighborhood every time I work. I walk that trail every day. I've heard basic testimony that it's a wonderful, safe, quiet neighborhood. And then somebody else stood up and said there's break-ins and undesirables on the trail. So what kind of neighborhood is it really? I mean, that's what I'm trying to find out. I haven't seen the break-in part or the bad part.
Shane Morse again. Again, to that previous question, what do you guys have to do with this? Well, we live there, and so I can tell you, this town has got a vagrant problem. And
Again, Mr. Morse, that is separate from what we're here for today. That's what I'm trying to get across.
Why-
Those things are separate. That trail is separate. The soccer fields are separate. This is a property owner we're dealing with here,
correct.
who has rights as well, and you have rights as well. So we're trying to figure, it doesn't change my mind one way or another, or make up my mind one way or another about that trail, the creek, the soccer fields, the traffic. I'm aware of that. The police can handle those things. That's what they're supposed to do. We're here for a different matter here. We're here for protecting a neighborhood or his property too. So it's a big decision. It's a real
Correct.
big decision.
Correct. That's why
But-
I think the tally.
But that's why I want somebody to tell me
Rather-
what's so unsafe about the neighborhood or what's so safe.
The tally is rather lopsided here, from what we've heard tonight. As I was moving to, with each incremental increase of outsiders, there has been a detriment. Again, what's the ledger? You've got all these people opposed. Those 4, it's pretty clear. And so, with the trail brought traffic, and now you're talking about in the soccer fields, who knows there? Now you're talking about increasing the situation. Could that in any way be spun as a positive? Is that going to roll back the problems that have been experienced? I would posit it would not.
But on the other hand, is it gonna make the problem worse?
Yes,
I'm-
I do believe, yes.
But that's an unknown right now, right?
I'm not, I have small children, sir. I'm not willing to take that risk.
There's small children at the soccer field, on the trails, the dog park, all the way around the place. I've heard complaints about the dog park, the trail, and the soccer fields, and they're as important as what you're talking about now. And I'm trying to get in my mind how Airbnb is gonna make that neighborhood worse than what
You
it
have
is now.
you have unknown commodities coming into that home. All the talk about vetting, it's can they pay? Can they pay? I encourage you, read Airbnb's on their corporate website.
I have, I wouldn't be discussing this with you now, I have thoroughly.
Well, I was kind of
wanted to ask that gentleman
curious
a
about the
question.
deed restrictions and why you guys didn't know about that. But back to the point at hand, if you look at the Airbnb corporate model, it is all this. Any vetting that goes on is, do they get paid? Now, there's been raised the possibility of over-the-top stuff. Well, you say, okay, well, what would be the remedy for that? Well, that individual who rented that Airbnb will be put on the naughty list, but it's all over and done for us.
I understand that.
Horses out,
I understand.
down over the hill,
Get
over
some clarity here of what's right and what's wrong and what we tell this man he can and cannot do with his property, but we're not telling you the same thing. I understand there's a walking trail. I understand there's soccer fields and kids play soccer. I've been down there watching them play soccer. How dangerous are they? But they were brought up tonight. How dangerous is the trail? And it was brought up tonight. You understand where I'm coming from? The
No,
Airbnb,
I
is
don't
Airbnb
exactly.
more important than
I
the
have a
shooting?
hard time understanding with, unknowns, variables, any variable.
The trail's unknown.
Exactly.
The soccer fields are unknown. The creek's unknown.
I
The
was,
golf course is
I was, I was around when those things were proposed, and I remember exactly what property owners told the city. They said, "You're inviting trouble here."
Has there been big trouble?
You've
That
got,
you know of, since you've moved in down there?
I have had a number of people, strangers, just glomming through the place. And again, they are, who are they? I don't know. Do you know who they are? You don't know.
I don't know everybody unless I stop on the
There
top.
you go. So,
I understand where you're
I'm
coming.
I'm just saying, look at the ledger. What kind of, where are people at here tonight? What has happened each time you've had an increase in unknowns in this neighborhood? It's not been positive, so why on earth would one want to keep going in that direction?
So do we ask the city to get rid of the soccer fields and the trail too?
That's
I mean, it's unknown. You
That's a
said it
red
yourself,
herring,
It's
sir.
unknown.
That's a red herring. That's not something you or I can have
So is the
anything to do with.
Airbnb. It's a red herring.
No. The Airbnb's not done.
But it would be. It would be a red herring to you if it were accepted, right?
Do you know what a red herring is, sir? A red herring is, it's neither here nor there. We are here tonight
But you're
about an
already making an
Airbnb
assumption that it's going to be bad.
based upon what has been seen with increase in unknowns.
Is it the same basis you use for the trail and the soccer fields?
Well,
And the dog park.
if you are seeing, and I've been there for a limited amount of time, there's people been here for many, many decades.
And I respect that. Trust me, I respect that. That is deep in my mind. Trust me.
There's
You're the junior in the neighborhood, but you're the spokesman.
No, I never, did I?
You jumped
couch
up
myself
and
as
came
that?
up, and how long you been there?
The
How
reason,
much trouble have you had in your yard, other than wanting to shoot deers or talking about shooting deer, which had nothing to do with this either?
as an example though, of what you can or can't do, and whether you should do that or not
That's why-
for the
that's why
consideration of
we're
your
here,
neighbors.
To see what we can do, or can't.
Yeah,
That would be something.
I would concur.
Yeah, I think, I'm not, we'll have one more comment, and we'll give one more chance. Although I did see a hand from somebody who hasn't spoke. Well, please, if you do want to say something, come on up and we'll swear you in.
All I wanted to say
But-
was my
but go ahead.
connection to the trail, to the soccer field, to the
You could go-
creek, is this an unsavory character rents their house, and there's a great possibility of that. You've got a soccer field full of little kids that
Mm-hmm.
one could be abducted, whatever. He's got little kids, I've got my grandson. there's more little kids and there's elderly neighbors. That was my connection to the trail, the soccer field, the creek. That was my connection.
And I understand that, believe
Is
me.
because we don't want somebody that we don't have any idea who they are or what they've done or what they have intentions of.
I fully understand, believe me.
Swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Name and address, please.
Stephen Johnson, 104 Walnut Street. I think the bottom line is that, you know, these folks don't want the short-term rental in their neighborhood, and there's more of them opposed than there is anybody speaking for them. So I think that definitely needs to be put into consideration. But I will say this, we own, and I won't say Airbnb because that's become a bad word, but Verbo, short-term rental on Walnut Street, down the road, and you are all completely wrong about the people that come there. We get groups of old women who come there and want to check out Berea. People your age that want to come and check out Berea, and that's all they want to do. They're not vagrants. The people that used to live in that house were vagrants, and I had to deal with drug dealers all the time that rented that house, short, long-term rental all the time, shooting up. My high school kid could see them shooting up in their backyard. We had to call the police many times. These were people that needed to go, okay? But the people that do come to our short-term rental are fine. They're older people that are from Ohio, Indiana, that want to see Berea, want to look at the crafts, you know, want to go to the craft shops. Sometimes they're families of graduates who want to come for commencement. They stay there. We have never had a drug dealer. We've never had anybody come. I mean, obviously there are people we don't know, but there's never been anybody causing trouble or having big parties. You're wrong, okay? It takes one person, but I'm saying we've done it for a year and a half, and we've never once had one person that's a vagrant or a drug dealer. We did before. Now, keep in mind, when we had rental people that were in that house before, we had a problem. Now, I'm not saying that they should be approved, because I think, like I said, there are more people here against it than there are for it. If these folks had anybody here that would defend them, it might, but they don't, unfortunately. I wish you did, but it might be a different story, you know.
If I'd known I had needed someone to speak up for me, I would have brought
Well,
someone.
I mean, yeah, and I'm sorry that happened, and I'm not saying I'm not predicting the outcome of this. I'm just defending. I just want to stay off the internet. Just don't believe, you know, all the hype and everything on Fox News or whatever you're reading about Airbnb and about Verbo, because it's not right. Okay.
I'm going to hold it to one more. I think we have an understanding of viewpoints.
With the young man, this is our neighborhood, not his.
Right, I understand.
And that's what we're trying to defend, is our neighborhood. Been there 40 years.
So to that, I'll just say one thing. You know, we have been approached by the options. If short-term rental's not approved, the other alternative is going to be a long-term rental. We have certainly heard some horror stories about long-term rentals, but that's just it. You know, you never know what's going to happen. But I just wanted to leave it at that. And,
If it goes to long-term rental, we get to know the people who are living there.
okay.
You know,
Yep.
they're not in and out
Right.
every day, every 2 days, every 3 days.
Agreed.
We do get to know our neighbors.
Yep.
So we're not interested in having transit situations, a motel situation in our neighborhood. So I appreciate if y'all refuse it.
All right. I think unless either of you have some points of discussion, I think it's about time.
I have a comment. And we've been doing this for 4 years, I think, and this is by far the most interaction we've had in those 4 years, for or against. And that does, I think that does make a difference. But I live in a neighborhood that's next to a business, conditional use permit in R1. Conditional use in R1. There's no issues there. I too have transients walking through my backyard from the railroad tracks. I too have called the police to watch and to deal with drugs being used on those railroad tracks. I don't think there's any part of this community that's immune to that sort of thing. I don't think it has anything to do with Airbnb or VRBO or anything like that in my mind. I've also experienced in watching a neighborhood decline because of long-term rentals. So I think we have to be careful, and I think this board doesn't take it lightly in making those decisions. But sometimes we might need to be careful about what we ask for. Because, as it was said earlier, all VRBO and Airbnb are about the money. Well, if I'm a property owner and I'm renting a house, it's about the money too. So I don't think there's much difference in that respect from a business standpoint. And I certainly understand Mr. Breeding's, issues with wanting to maintain the property and understanding what happens when you get long-term renters in there that don't take care of the property, that destroy it. When you talk about property values declining at that point, then that really happens. But I think, as Mr. Johnson said, the folks here tonight that have spoken, not only the number, but also with the passion that's there, I'm willing to make a motion to deny the short-term rental application for 115 Harrison Court.
Motion has been made to deny the application. Any further discussion from the board? Is there a second? Since we only have 3 to make a quorum, and I am the third vote, I will also, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. The request is denied. And I do wish you the best and appreciate,
If I might have one further comment, we will not intentionally rent to a long-term person that we think is going to do harm to any of you or to any of the neighborhood. Our house has been vacant while we were in another state the past 2 or 3 years, and the house needs someone in it. The house goes down if there's no one occupying it.
thank you. You're welcome. I do hope it works out for everybody. Yeah,
I don't want to take any more of your time than
okay.
absolutely necessary, but it's just a matter of interest to me, a matter of clarification. If it were an Airbnb, and did you say something about having to have a business license? Okay. Well, what if it was a hair salon? Would it be treated the same way?
It would go through the same
Hair
process.
salons
No,
are
they're
not
allowed.
permitted
No.
in R1.
Or
So we have a whole list on our website is a document called the Land Management and Development Ordinance. And in that document, we classify per each zone what is the permitted uses. So you can look in that document, and so it's either this use is permitted, it's not permitted, or it's conditionally permitted. Generally speaking, in a R1 zone, single-family dwellings permitted. Nothing more dense than that, so obviously no duplex, no multifamily, not permitted. These circumstances, again, we elected 4 years ago to make short-term rental conditionally permitted, again, so that citizens can have a say. Generally speaking, though, most businesses are not permitted in an R1 zone. There are a few exceptions to that, maybe being like if I worked from home on a computer all day and I do my work remotely on a computer, you can do that. Nobody knows that's a business, right? And so, but certainly nothing where you're getting traffic. But there's a complete list in that document on our website,
What was, on the website?
on the website.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you very much.
Yep.
Great, all right. Well, moving on to the next business item on the agenda, and that is Stephen and Heather Johnson, 209 Adams Street, requesting a conditional use permit for short-term rental in a B2 zone. And we'll go ahead and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We'll have you sworn in and state your name and address, and Amanda will swear you in.
If you don't mind, while these people are exiting, I'll just give a brief overview.
Oh, sure.
So the property with the little thumbprint, or thumbtack, sorry, is on the corner of Grant Street and Adams Street. The Brea Urban Farm is located just to the east of the property. I spun my map around. If the board members will remember, we had approved this as a short-term rental in the past, and this is that situation where we put conditions that if the property transferred or sold, new property owners would have to seek approval. And so with that, and I will state for the record, all notices have been sent as required by KRS statute, and it is a B2 zone. Thank you.
All right.
So, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And your name and a property address for the record?
Heather Johnson, and I live at 104 Walnut Street, Berea.
Thank you.
Basically, we just want to continue using that house as an Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rental, as it has been. I think it's been almost 2 years now they've had it, year and a half, something like that, as a short-term rental, and we just want to continue doing it in the same manner. It'll be, the exact same scenarios. Check-in from 4 to 10, check out 11 a.m. We've been currently running the one on Walnut Street for over a year and a half, and so we are pretty experienced at this. We know what we're doing when it comes to vetting people that stay there, occupancy, all of that. It would be, it's a 2-bed, 1-bath. I think it's like 1,100 square feet, and we're going to have 4 people maximum occupancy.
There is off-street parking?
There is.
Is,
It's a carport
it's,
right there on Grant Street.
That would be just for a single vehicle?
One single vehicle, yes. We just redid the driveway so that it's a smoother entrance into the carport.
Any questions for the applicant?
There's a nice parking lot next door to it now.
There sure is.
Yeah, I had a good look at that today.
Uh-huh.
Does that affect you in any way?
They're supposed to put a privacy fence up between their property and parking lot
Supposed to,
and
or
our
will they?
property.
They will.
Okay.
They will.
Okay.
Well, or some kind of buffer. I haven't talked about if it's vegetative screening or fence, but
Yes,
certainly something is required.
yes, because it's not just our house. There's like another property right behind our little house that's also affected by that parking lot, so.
Do you know how many occupants were allowed on the last permit?
4.
Is there anybody, unless there's some questions, is there anybody else in the audience that wants to comment on this request?
Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your name and property address for the record?
I'm Richard Olson. I live at 199 Adams, and I manage the Brea Urban Farm, which is right across. So I'm here to speak in favor of the application to actually resume the use of this house for Airbnb. This situation is about as different from the one you just dealt with as you can get. Of course, they are in a B2 zone, and we have data that this was run as an Airbnb for, I'm not sure how long, at least a year, maybe longer before the purchase. and we had no problems. You know, I would be working out there. I met some of the people who stayed there. At least superficially, they were all nice people, and we had some good conversations and all, so that really wasn't a problem. And I had to chuckle about, you have an Airbnb, you might have people in the neighborhood you don't know. Well, on a Friday night when Apollo's is hopping, there's 100 people walking down the street past the farm that I don't know. You know, it's just that type of neighborhood, so there's going to be no significant increment of unknowns, as they're called there. You know, and we have vagrants and drug users and all walk through the farm and everything without problem so far. But anyway, the people coming into this house will raise the probably the overall quality of the people in the neighborhood. One other thing, the piece of the farm that's right at the corner there of Grant and Adams is actually owned by the city. It was purchased by tourism to be part of the Brea Urban Farm. And they supported that because it was a destination to bring more people into Old Town and into the community. And so nationwide, agritourism is the fastest growing segment of tourism. And it's a growing segment of Brea's tourism too. And we have lots of people come to the farm, and we have people who have come and stayed in that Airbnb the first time because they were doing things with us on the farm, and it was right there. So really, in terms of agritourism, to be able to offer what's basically on-farm accommodations to people who come in for our workshops, for other gatherings that we have, I mean, just fits perfectly with what tourism had in mind when they purchased part of the farm. So, so we'd be very pleased if it could continue in that use. And I'll say that that house is literally the last barrier between us and the insatiable demand of Apollo's for more parking. So we have a real interest in it being an economically viable and stable place. And we know the owners, and you know, they've done a lot already to brighten up that house and make it more, shifting it from its battleship gray exterior to something that's much prettier and more interesting. So anyway, we're in favor, and we hope you will allow them to resume the use of that building for an Airbnb. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just
Go
have
ahead.
a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you know what the occupancy rate of that?
Like with the previous
With
owners?
the previous owners.
I think it was around 60%. And we're really hoping to improve that. And we think we will with the looks changing. And
My question was, is there on-street parking permitted anywhere on that corner, on Adams Street or Grant Street?
the person that rents the house behind our house always parks in the street in front of her house,
On Grant Street?
on Grant, yes.
Is that would it be an issue if there was a condition that there wouldn't be on-street parking?
That there would be no on-street
Right,
parking?
that would,
It could.
Mhm.
A lot of people meet from different directions.
Right.
One comes from Ohio, one comes from Indiana, and they're meeting for a weekend.
Exactly.
We get that a lot at the house on Walnut Street. So, yeah, requiring they all fit in one car
right.
could be difficult. We park on Grant Street all the time when we're doing stuff at the house.
And if I'm not mistaken, if there is on-street parking on Adams?
Yes, there is.
Yes, both
Okay.
sides.
There is.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
When I looked at it today, it looked like you could get 2 vehicles there between Apollo's and there, but
Yes.
it'd have to be small vehicles, but I mean, yeah,
Yes.
there'd be enough there.
Definitely.
There's no yellow curb there.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, of course.
Mr. Chairman, I
Well,
make a
we
mo-
got one more comment.
I just want to say that I was talking earlier about the one on Walnut Street, and it's just been, I think it's been just an improvement. I mean, I think it's definitely helped the area. I mean, besides just having hotels, I know I've heard that there might be there's going to start being in neighborhoods like a limit to the amount of Airbnbs. I don't know if you all are discussing that. But I mean, we're not out to do anything else. This is it. We wouldn't have even done this probably if it wasn't already short-term rental. It just happened that way, and we got to know those people and made an offer to take it over because we're not out to Airbnb neighborhoods or anything, because I do think that, limits are probably good. But at the same time, I just want to say that the one on Walnut Street's been a success in the sense that, it has brought in a lot of, really nice tourists that have gotten to see the town. And like I said before, families of graduates of Berea College, get to stay there. And we've just had, some very, very nice groups of people come and just been, really happy to have a house to meet at and relax in a little yard or whatever. So, I think Airbnb or VRBOs, I don't know if it's, hopefully it's still got a good reputation. I think it does, but I'm just here to say that it, I think it's been a benefit to Berea. So, thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else? I'm 0 for 2 on this tonight. I'm 0 for 2. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit for 209 Adams Street in the B2 zone. Check-in time no later than 10 p.m. Permit, the conditional use permit stay with the owner if there's a sale. One off-street parking, and a maximum of 4 occupants.
Motion has been made to approve conditional use for short-term rental at 209 Adams Street with a check-in time no later than 10. The condition would expire with would stay only with the owner, and a single off-street parking requirement. Is there any discussion or a second?
There's a second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. I make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.